In the desolate trenches of the Eastern Front, under the cloak of a moonless night, German soldiers strained their ears. A faint, almost imperceptible rustling sound would often pierce the oppressive silence, growing gradually from a distant whisper to a subtle hum. It was a sound that brought with it not the roar of powerful engines, but a delicate, almost ghostly flutter, akin to a broomstick sweeping through the air. This insidious sound was a harbinger of death, a chilling prelude to the thunderous explosions that would soon rip through the darkness, shattering the stillness and plunging their positions into chaos. This was the signature of the unseen enemy, the terrifying, elusive adversary that sowed fear and destruction from above. They were the bane of the Wehrmacht, the silent harbingers of doom, and they earned a fearsome, almost mythical moniker from their terrified adversaries, the Nachthexen, the Night Witches. For the Soviet forces, however, these audacious women were not figures of dread but symbols of hope, courage, and an unwavering commitment to defending their homeland. Their legend was forged in the inferno of war, born from a unique blend of ingenuity, bravery, and sheer determination, creating a lasting legacy that continues to inspire. They were an enigma, a whisper that evolved into a legend, embodying both the silent terror for the enemy and an enduring symbol of defiance for their own people. As one veteran of the regiment eloquently recalled, encapsulating the profound psychological impact they had on the enemy, "We struck terror into them. They called us Nachthexen, but we were just doing our job." This simple yet powerful statement underscores the pragmatic bravery that defined these remarkable women, who, despite the fear they inspired, saw themselves as dutiful soldiers executing their mission with unyielding resolve. Section 1. The Birth of a Legend. Marina Raskova's Call, October 1941. The initial months of the Great Patriotic War were a period of unimaginable hardship and existential threat for the Soviet Union. The German invasion, launched in June 1941, caught the nation largely unprepared, leading to devastating losses of territory, military personnel, and vital resources. As the Wehrmacht advanced relentlessly deeper into Soviet lands, the urgency to mobilize every available resource, human and material, became paramount. The conventional wisdom of warfare, particularly regarding the roles of women in combat, was rapidly being challenged by the sheer desperation of the situation. It was in this crucible of crisis that a truly groundbreaking and audacious idea began to take shape: the formation of all-female aviation regiments. At the heart of this revolutionary concept was a towering figure in Soviet aviation, Marina Raskova. A celebrated pilot, navigator, and a hero of the Soviet Union herself, Raskova was not merely an advocate for women in combat. She was their indefatigable champion and, indeed, their godmother and inspirer. Recognizing the untapped potential of thousands of highly skilled female pilots, navigators, and ground crew who were eager to contribute to the war effort, Raskova leveraged her considerable influence and prestige within the Soviet hierarchy. She tirelessly lobbied for the creation of dedicated women's aviation units, arguing passionately that women possessed not only the technical prowess but also the courage and patriotism required to engage in direct combat. Her vision was not just about filling gaps in manpower. It was about demonstrating the full capability of Soviet women in the face of an existential threat. Raskova's relentless efforts bore fruit in a remarkably short period, a testament to her persuasive power and the dire military necessity. The official directive that would forever change the course of women's participation in the Soviet military was issued on October 8, 1941. This pivotal document, Order Number 0099, formally sanctioned the creation of 3 distinct all-female aviation regiments. Among these was the now legendary 588th Night Bomber Regiment, which would later earn its fearsome moniker, the Night Witches. The other 2 regiments were the 586th Fighter Aviation Regiment and the 587th Bomber Aviation Regiment, later renamed the 125th Guards Bomber Aviation Regiment. This order was a bold declaration, shattering traditional gender roles and opening the skies to women who yearned to fight for their country. A little-known but deeply significant fact surrounding this recruitment drive underscores the extraordinary patriotism and dedication that define these women. Many of the young female volunteers who answered Raskova's call were not professional soldiers but rather students and recent graduates from prestigious Moscow universities, including Moscow State University, MSU, and the Moscow Aviation Institute, MAI, among others. These bright young women, who just days before had been immersed in academic pursuits, pursuing careers in science, engineering, and arts, swiftly exchanged their student uniforms for military tunics. Their decision was not made lightly. It represented a profound personal sacrifice and an unwavering commitment to defend their homeland at a moment of extreme peril. They traded textbooks for flight manuals, lecture halls for airfields, and the promise of a peaceful future for the immediate demands of a brutal war. From a broader perspective, the establishment of these female aviation regiments, particularly the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, was a profoundly audacious experiment. The Soviet High Command, grappling with catastrophic losses and a desperate shortage of trained personnel, found itself in an unprecedented situation. While necessity undoubtedly played a role, the decision to entrust women with not just support functions but with direct, frontline combat operations was a radical departure from military norms worldwide. It was a calculated risk, a testament to the Soviet Union's willingness to innovate and challenge conventional thinking in the face of an existential threat. By empowering women to take on such critical combat roles, the Soviet leadership not only unlocked a previously untapped reservoir of talent and patriotism but also sent a powerful message of national unity and resolve, demonstrating that every citizen, regardless of gender, had a vital part to play in the struggle for survival. This bold move laid the foundation for the legend of the Night Witches, proving that courage and skill transcend traditional boundaries. Section 2. Engels. The Harsh School of the Witches, Winter 1941 to 1942. With the official order signed and the initial wave of volunteers assembled, the crucial next step was to transform these determined young women into proficient combat pilots and navigators. The chosen training ground for this unprecedented endeavor was the city of Engels, located on the Volga River, a considerable distance from the front lines, offering a measure of safety and isolation conducive to intensive instruction. Here, amidst the biting cold of the Russian winter of 1941 to 1942, a rigorous and unrelenting training regimen commenced, designed to forge the Night Witches from yesterday's students and nascent Aero Club instructors. This was no ordinary flight school. It was a crucible where physical endurance, mental fortitude, and exceptional piloting skills were not just taught but brutally hammered into every recruit. The choice of aircraft for their training, and indeed for their combat missions, was a significant factor in shaping the regiment's unique character. These women were not introduced to cutting-edge fighter planes or formidable heavy bombers. Instead, their wings were the venerable Polikarpov U-2 biplane, an aircraft so rudimentary it was often simply referred to as the P-2. This was an outdated, canvas-covered biplane, originally designed in the 1920s as a primary trainer and crop duster. Its maximum speed was barely over 120 to 150 kilometers per hour. It had an open cockpit and lacked any sophisticated navigation equipment or defensive armaments. While seemingly primitive, the P-2 possessed certain characteristics that, when exploited with ingenuity, made it surprisingly effective for night bombing missions. It was exceptionally maneuverable, very slow, making it difficult for faster enemy fighters to engage, and had a remarkably low stall speed, allowing it to fly incredibly close to the ground. Critically, its engine, when throttled back, produced a distinctive, soft put-put sound, often compared to a sewing machine, which contributed to its whispering approach. The training itself was relentless and conducted almost exclusively under the shroud of darkness. The rationale was simple. The P-2 was too vulnerable to enemy fighters and anti-aircraft fire during daylight hours. Therefore, every aspect of their instruction, from takeoffs and landings to navigation and bomb aiming, had to be mastered in the pitch black. The conditions were brutal. The open cockpits exposed the pilots and navigators to the unforgiving Russian winter, with temperatures often plummeting far below freezing. Frostbite was a constant threat, and the physical demands were immense. Yet the women endured, driven by an unyielding resolve. They learned to rely on basic instruments, their innate senses, and each other, honing their night vision and situational awareness to an extraordinary degree. A particularly poignant and revealing fact, demonstrating the extraordinary self-sacrifice and unwavering commitment of these women, was their often unspoken, yet widely practiced, refusal of parachutes. To maximize the aircraft's very limited payload capacity and increase the amount of ordnance they could carry per sortie, the pilots and navigators themselves, without a formal order from above, frequently chose to leave their parachutes behind. These life-saving devices were heavy and took up valuable space. Instead, the precious weight and room in the cramped cockpits were allocated to additional bombs. This was an act of profound courage and desperate determination, a silent testament to their understanding of the grim realities of their missions. It meant that if their slow, fragile biplane was hit by enemy fire or encountered a critical mechanical failure, there would be no escape. Their only chance was to complete the mission and return. This decision, made by the women themselves, highlights their absolute dedication to inflicting maximum damage on the enemy, even at the cost of their own safety. Amidst the intense training and the grim realities of war, certain myths and anecdotes inevitably arose, often attempting to explain the seemingly superhuman capabilities of these night-flying women. One such prevalent rumor, particularly among those outside the regiment, was that the female pilots consumed copious amounts of carrot juice to enhance their night vision. The idea was that the high vitamin A content would somehow grant them an advantage in the darkness. While carrots are indeed beneficial for overall eye health, the truth behind the night witch's exceptional ability to navigate and operate in the dark was far less mystical and far more grounded in relentless effort and physiological adaptation. Their secret was not a dietary supplement, but rather an unwavering dedication to endless training exercises. Hour after hour, night after night, they practiced flying, navigating, and targeting in absolute darkness. This grueling regimen, combined with the natural ability of the human eye to adapt to low-light conditions over time, was the real source of their unparalleled night vision. Their success was a product of discipline, repetition, and a profound familiarity with the challenges of nocturnal flight, not some magical elixir. Thus, in the harsh winter of 1941 to 1942, amidst the rudimentary facilities of Engels, a unique and formidable combat unit was forged. From yesterday's students and Aero Club enthusiasts emerged the future night witches. Their skills honed through grueling training on outdated biplanes, their resolve tempered by self-sacrifice, and their legend beginning to take shape even before their first combat mission. This period laid the essential groundwork for their future successes, instilling in them the discipline, resilience, and unique operational techniques that would make them a terrifying force in the night sky. Section 3. Baptism of Fire and the Tactics of Ghosts, June 1942. Having endured the harsh crucible of training in Engels, the women of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment were finally deemed ready to face the enemy. Their moment of truth arrived in June 1942. A critical juncture in the war when the Soviet Union was still reeling from the devastating German offensive. The regiment was deployed to the Southern Front, where the fighting was fierce and the stakes incredibly high. This move marked their official entry into the brutal reality of aerial combat, transforming them from trainees into active combatants. The air was thick with tension, fear, and the pervasive smell of war, but these women, hardened by their rigorous preparation, were ready to contribute to the monumental struggle. Their first combat mission took place on June 12, 1942. This date is etched into the history of the regiment as their baptism of fire. Under the cover of darkness, the fragile P-2 biplanes, each piloted by a young woman and navigated by another, took to the skies over the southern front. Their targets were enemy positions, supply depots, and troop concentrations, anything that could hinder the German war machine. The very act of taking off into the perilous night, knowing that enemy anti-aircraft guns and night fighters awaited, required immense courage and an unwavering commitment to their mission. This first engagement, though just one night's work, set the stage for the countless sorties that would follow, establishing their presence and beginning to sow the seeds of their legendary reputation. The aircraft they flew, the P-2, was fundamentally limited in its carrying capacity. Each biplane was capable of carrying a maximum of approximately 300 kilograms of bombs per sortie. This seemingly modest payload meant that single attacks would not be sufficient to achieve significant strategic damage. Instead, the effectiveness of the Night Witches lay in their persistence, their precision, and, crucially, their unique and highly disruptive tactical approach. They compensated for the small bomb load by conducting numerous, relentless missions throughout a single night, hitting the same targets repeatedly or striking various objectives across a wide area. This strategy of continuous harassment and incremental damage proved to be incredibly effective in demoralizing enemy troops and disrupting their operations. It was their innovative and unconventional tactics that truly made the 588th Night Bomber Regiment legendary and earned them their chilling moniker. Faced with slow, vulnerable aircraft and heavily defended enemy positions, they developed what came to be known as the Witches Method, a tactic that exploited the P-2's inherent characteristics and turned its weaknesses into strengths. The core of this method involved approaching the target with the engine completely switched off. After climbing to a certain altitude, the pilot would cut the engine, allowing the biplane to glide silently towards its objective in a terrifying, almost ghostly descent. The only sound preceding the bombs would be the eerie, soft rustling of the wind through the biplane's canvas wings and struts, which the German soldiers likened to the sound of a witch's broom. This silent approach denied the enemy early warning, making it incredibly difficult for ground defenses to pinpoint their location until the very last moment. Beyond the silent glide, the regiment often employed a sophisticated box formation for their attacks. Typically, 3 aircraft would approach a target area. 2 of these planes would serve as decoys, actively drawing enemy anti-aircraft fire and searchlight beams towards themselves. They would maneuver erratically, performing evasive actions to divert attention and overwhelm the enemy's defenses. Meanwhile, under the cover of this carefully orchestrated diversion, the 3rd aircraft would silently glide in, unobserved, and precisely deliver its bombs onto the designated target. This coordinated approach maximized the chances of a successful strike while minimizing the risk to the bombing aircraft. The element of surprise, combined with the psychological impact of the silent approach and the overwhelming effect of multiple simultaneous attacks, made this tactic devastatingly effective against the German forces. The Germans, utterly bewildered and terrorized by these nocturnal assailants, developed a grudging respect, often laced with exasperation and dark humor, for the Night Witches. A particularly telling anecdote, circulating among the German troops, reflected their utter helplessness against the relentless attacks. They would bitterly joke that a Russian plywood plane could only be shot down once per sortie. However, the crushing reality for them was that these planes, seemingly made of fragile wood and fabric, would return again and again, up to 15 times in a single night. This joke was a bitter, desperate attempt to cope with their inability to effectively counter an enemy that seemed to defy conventional aerial combat rules. It underscored their frustration and the profound psychological toll these continuous, silent attacks took on their morale. The Germans' grim humor served as a stark reflection of their impotence in the face of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment's unique and terrifying operational prowess. The tactics of ghosts had been unleashed, and they were relentlessly haunting the enemy. Section 4. Daily Life, Youth, and Iron Will, 1942 to 1945. Behind the heroic exploits and the terrifying legend of the Night Witches lay a stark and often brutal reality: the everyday lives of young women enduring the relentless grind of total war. Far from the glamorized image of wartime pilots, their existence was one of harsh conditions, constant danger, and immense physical and emotional strain. These were not seasoned veterans at the outset, but mostly young women, many barely out of their teenage years, thrust into one of the most demanding combat roles imaginable. Their story is not just one of aerial combat, but also of resilience, camaraderie, and the extraordinary human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. The daily routine of the Night Witches was dictated by the unforgiving rhythm of night bombing. For the pilots and navigators, a single night often meant flying an astonishing number of sorties, typically between 8 and 12, sometimes even more. Each mission involved meticulous preparation, tense flights over enemy territory, precision bombing, and hazardous returns, all executed under the veil of darkness. The physical toll of such intense activity was immense. With so much of their time spent in the air, what little rest they could snatch was often taken in the most basic and uncomfortable conditions. They frequently slept next to their beloved, yet fragile, P-2 aircraft, often in freezing tents or rudimentary dugouts. These temporary shelters offered little protection from the elements, leaving them exposed to the biting cold, damp, and mud that characterized much of the Eastern Front, regardless of the season. Sleep was a precious commodity, often interrupted and rarely deep, yet they somehow found the strength to rise again and again for their next mission. Beyond the immediate dangers of combat, the women faced numerous challenges that underscored the unique difficulties of their situation. One such challenge was the practical matter of their uniforms. Designed for male soldiers, the standard-issue military uniform was ill-fitting and cumbersome for the women. The oversized tunics, trousers, and boots were not only uncomfortable, but also impractical for the close confines of the cockpit and the precision required for flying. Consequently, the women themselves had to spend valuable time and effort altering their uniforms, skillfully taking them in to achieve a better fit. This seemingly minor detail highlights the broader issues of adapting a military structure, traditionally designed for men, to accommodate women in combat roles, and showcases the resourcefulness of these women in making do with what was available. Despite the relentless pressure and the grim environment, their youth, with its inherent desire for beauty and connection, often found subtle ways to manifest itself. A little-known fact that offers a tender glimpse into their inner lives reveals this poignantly. The girls were often quite superstitious, a common human response to living in constant peril. Before each potentially deadly flight, they had a habit of singing songs, a collective ritual that perhaps served as a release of tension, a bond of sisterhood, or even a quiet plea for protection. Another, more practical superstition involved their Komsomol, Communist Youth League membership cards. These important documents, signifying their political allegiance and identity, were frequently left on the ground before a mission. This act was not a sign of disloyalty, but a grim, unspoken acknowledgement of the very real possibility that they might not return. It was a way of ensuring that if they perished, their personal effects, and thus their identities, would be preserved for their families and comrades. One particularly moving quote from a veteran navigator encapsulates the poignant juxtaposition of their youth and their harsh reality. "We were 20 years old. We sewed white handkerchiefs into the lining of our tunics, so that under deadly fire we might at least somewhat resemble girls." This statement is profoundly evocative. It speaks to the universal yearning for identity and femininity, even in the most unfeminine of environments. The white handkerchief, a small, fragile symbol of purity and girlhood, sewn discreetly into the rugged, oversized military tunic, served as a private, almost defiant assertion of their true selves beneath the soldier's exterior. It was a tiny act of rebellion against the dehumanizing force of war, a quiet insistence on their humanity and their youth amidst the ever-present threat of death. It illustrates their desire to cling to a part of their former lives, to maintain a sense of who they were as young women, even as they performed tasks of unimaginable bravery and brutality. Thus, the period between 1942 and 1945 was defined by a remarkable blend of extraordinary courage in the air and a gritty, resilient existence on the ground. These young women navigated not only enemy anti-aircraft fire but also the severe conditions of the front, the demands of their relentless missions, and the profound psychological toll of war. Their friendships were forged in the crucible of shared danger. Their will was hardened by adversity, and their youthful spirits, though often masked by the grim realities of their service, found subtle ways to endure. Their story is a testament to the iron will of a generation that refused to break, even as they faced death night after night. Section 5. The Price of Victory and Immortality, 1943 to 1945. As the Great Patriotic War raged on, turning tides and shifting fronts brought both renewed hope and continued, devastating losses. For the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, the years between 1943 and 1945 represented the peak of their combat effectiveness, but also the period during which the cumulative toll of their relentless missions became most apparent. This was an era marked by unparalleled achievements, courageous sacrifices, and the enduring tragedy inherent in any conflict. The Night Witches continued to fly night after night, contributing significantly to the Soviet war effort, leaving behind a legacy of heroism and an astonishing record that defied the very nature of their humble aircraft. The ultimate measure of the regiment's heroism and impact on the war effort is reflected in the high honors bestowed upon its members. A remarkable 23 women from the 588th Regiment were posthumously or livingly awarded the highest military decoration in the Soviet Union, the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. This esteemed recognition was not given lightly. It was reserved for individuals who displayed exceptional bravery and performed outstanding feats in service to the motherland. To have nearly a quarter of the regiment's core combat personnel achieve such a distinction underscores the extraordinary courage and effectiveness of these women. Each star represented a story of daring missions, unwavering resolve, and profound sacrifice. Among these decorated heroes, some individuals achieved truly staggering numbers of combat sorties, showcasing their incredible endurance and dedication. Notably, two of these valiant women, Irina Sabrova and Natalia Meklin, who later became Kravtsova after marriage, each completed over 1,000 combat missions. To comprehend the sheer scale of this achievement, one must recall the conditions under which they flew. In slow, open-cockpit biplanes, often multiple times a night, exposed to enemy fire, extreme weather, and constant fatigue. Each flight was a perilous journey, and to repeat this feat 1,000 times over speaks volumes about their physical stamina, mental fortitude, and profound commitment to their cause. Their names became synonymous with the regiment's tenacity and ceaseless aerial bombardment. Considering the extreme dangers inherent in night bombing missions with vulnerable aircraft, the overall losses sustained by the 588th Night Bomber Regiment were astonishingly low. A little-known fact that highlights their exceptional skill and survivability is that the regiment lost a total of only 32 personnel throughout the entire war. This figure is incredibly low for an aviation unit engaged in constant, direct combat operations over several years. Such a low casualty rate, particularly in a branch of aviation where every mission carried a high risk of being shot down by anti-aircraft fire or intercepted by enemy night fighters, is a profound testament to the unparalleled skill, meticulous planning, and unique evasive tactics employed by the Night Witches. It indicates not only their individual bravery but also their collective operational excellence, their ability to adapt, and their mastery of their antiquated aircraft. Their survival rate was a direct reflection of their professionalism and their ability to outwit a technologically superior enemy. The regiment continued its relentless bombing campaign right up until the final days of the war, relentlessly pursuing the retreating German forces. Their last combat sortie took place on May 4, 1945, a mere 5 days before Germany's unconditional surrender. This final mission was conducted near the very walls of Berlin, marking the culmination of their extensive and arduous journey across the vast expanse of the Eastern Front, from the desperate defenses of 1942 to the final offensive push towards the enemy's capital. It symbolized the completion of their mission, having relentlessly pursued the enemy from their initial incursions deep into Soviet territory all the way back to their heartland. The interpretation of their survival and success points to a profound truth. Their youthful appearance and seemingly fragile nature were utterly deceptive. Beneath the surface of these young women lay an iron will and an unprecedented level of professional mastery. This combination allowed them not only to survive the brutal realities of aerial warfare, but also to triumph against formidable odds. Their resilience in the face of fear, their unwavering determination in the pursuit of their objectives, and their exceptional piloting and navigational skills were the true forces that enabled them to persist, inflict significant damage on the enemy, and ultimately contribute to the Soviet victory. Their story is a powerful reminder that heroism and strength come in many forms, often defying conventional expectations, and that a determined spirit can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Conclusion: the legacy of the Night Witches. As the final bombs fell near Berlin in May 1945, the incredible combat journey of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, the Night Witches, drew to a close. Their contribution to the Soviet victory in the Great Patriotic War was immense and undeniable, forged through years of relentless nocturnal warfare, self-sacrifice, and unparalleled courage. Their story is more than just a chapter in military history. It is a profound testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience and heroism under the most dire circumstances. The comprehensive impact of their unwavering efforts can be summarized through their remarkable final statistics. Throughout their service, the regiment collectively performed an astounding 23,672 combat sorties. This staggering number represents countless hours flown over enemy territory, under constant threat, in all weather conditions, and under the cover of darkness. With each sortie, they delivered their deadly payload, accumulating a total of approximately 3,000 tons of bombs dropped on enemy positions, supply lines, troop concentrations, and infrastructure. These figures are not mere numbers. They are a concrete measure of the constant pressure they exerted on the German forces, the disruption they caused to enemy operations, and the direct assistance they provided to ground troops fighting for every inch of Soviet soil. Their persistent, low-altitude attacks, though individually modest in payload, cumulatively inflicted significant damage and, perhaps more importantly, had a devastating psychological effect on the enemy. Amidst the grim realities of war, the motivations of these young women were deeply rooted in their love for their homeland and their people. A powerful quote from an interview with a veteran of the regiment eloquently captures this sentiment. "Nobody likes war, but we knew what we were fighting for our land, for our loved ones, and in this was our strength." This statement cuts to the core of their motivation, revealing that their bravery was not born of a love for conflict, but from a profound sense of duty and an unwavering commitment to protect all that they held dear. Their strength was not just in their piloting skills or their clever tactics. It lay in the moral clarity of their cause and the deep, personal connection they felt to the land and families they defended. It was this intrinsic motivation that fueled their courage, allowing them to overcome fear and push beyond their limits, night after night. The legacy of the night witches extends far beyond the statistics and the battlefield. Their story is not merely a collection of heroic pages from the past. It is an enduring and eternal symbol of courage, resilience, and the extraordinary potential that lies within every individual. It serves as a powerful reminder that heroism is not confined by gender, social status, or the conventional expectations of society. Instead, it is a quality that can emerge in any person whose heart is filled with love for their homeland and a steadfast belief in a righteous cause. The Night Witches shattered gender stereotypes, proving that women were not only capable of performing demanding combat roles but could excel in them, often with unique ingenuity and an indomitable spirit. Their actions resonated far beyond the immediate context of World War II, inspiring generations and cementing their place as pioneers who redefined the boundaries of what women could achieve in military service. They remain an iconic example of how sheer determination, skill, and an unwavering moral compass can lead to triumph, even when faced with overwhelming odds, leaving an indelible mark on history as true heroes.